Welcome back to the Road to Tampa. No Ike Colair here today. It's just Lindsey Plotkin and me, and we are here to break down a tremendous week of Texas women's basketball, climbing to number three in the AP poll, now just behind Notre Dame and UCLA. Lindsey, what a week, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. What a week. That South Carolina game was it was incredible. Like
I
both
mean,
games were really good.
being Lindsey being there, I mean, it was such a treat. And I know we were both in the post game presser after. I don't consider myself a professional, but I like to act as professional as possible. I was nervous raising a
Mhm.
question. Caleb Yum had to help me out a bit.
Yeah, he was telling us about that last night. He was
Oh, was
like,
he really?
yeah, because he was doing a story on Bam too, and he was like, he was like, yeah, Zach was so nervous. He was like, barely raising his hands, like, you just gotta go for it. Like, you
I
just gotta
know.
make eye contact
I
and like
know, dude.
stare down Jeremy
Well,
and just be like, I have a question, and he'll just
I'm like
point
sitting
to
there.
you.
I'm like, Jeremy, please. I got the last one off, but that's all thanks to Caleb. And yeah, it was cool seeing Dawn Staley in the building. I mean, I'm sure she felt the effects of the Moody Center. 10,713 people. I think that's the max, or 743, something like that. I mean,
Mhm.
filled to the brim, as loud as a stadium as I've ever heard. Lindsay, but let's just start there. Like the culture Vic Schaefer has built, that never would have happened. Like, I don't know, last year. Like,
Yeah, I mean, even like 2 years ago or like something, like that's still just insane. Like to see just like the growth and like how the team has grown into the Moody Center. And like I've been to a lot of the men's games when it's been that full and it's never gotten anywhere close to that loud or been that good of an environment. Like it just goes to show how much people care about this team and how much the sport is growing, which is awesome to see.
yeah, I mean, I hate to make this point, but I think it's a large part of it. The reason the women are getting such a crowd, in part, I'm not saying this is a 100% why, but the men not playing very well, I feel like helps out the women in a kind of way because it makes the student body look forward to basketball. Because the men, you're not really looking forward to games like against Bama. Like you always knew they were going to lose last yesterday. So it's I think it's 10% good timing and it's 90% 5 years of what Vic Schaefer can do, you know? And I remember like against in the Tennessee game, Amo was like joking around how like there were four fans at the Cooley Center. And that was the like my first year was the first year of the Moody Center. So I don't know what the Cooley Center was like, but it's just cool to see that. It felt like they were playing in crowds of nobody to 10,000 strong, you know?
Yeah, like I think they only played at Cooley like when it was like COVID because that was like the easiest way to do it. And I think that was actually like their practice facility. Like it wasn't even like a real stadium. Like we always had the Irwin Center, and I remember like when I was little, like we would do like the group ticket things to the Irwin Center games, and it was just empty. And like we were like some of the only people there, and they were still a really good team back then too. But it just goes to show like how much people want to see a team that wins. And now with the growth of women's basketball, like it's just people want to come to these games and they realize these games are fun and they're not going to see all of like the high flying dunks like they are in the men's game. But I think people are starting to be okay with that and they just want to see a good basketball game. And that's what te the Texas women give them.
Yeah, it's just you look at I don't know. Like if you talk about the growth of women's basketball, like the number one thing that comes to me is Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark
Mhm.
can be raining threes from anywhere. And then you go to watch Texas basketball, and it's the complete opposite of what Iowa did last year. Like I think they went 1 for 3 from the free throw line. Their first or from the 3 point line. Their first three wasn't even attempted until like an end
I don't
of
even
like
think they
shot
made a
clock.
three against South
Did they
Carolina.
did they go over? They might have gone 0 for
I
3
think
or
they were 0 for 3 from the
0 for 3.
like
So
I
there you
think
go.
they made a
So
three.
you're watching a different kind of basketball, and I feel like that's I mean, not to go off topic, but just to go to a general broad perspective of women's basketball and this team, I mean, the ball movement is so good. I mean, the basketball is so fun to watch, Lindsay.
Yeah.
It's just it's really beautiful basketball, and they utilize Kyla Oldacre and Taylor Jones like they're averaging 21 points per game in the SEC together, over 10 rebounds. Like every bucket ends either with a Madison Booker, Rory Harmon 8 foot jumper, or a Kyla Oldacre, Taylor Jones 2 foot layup. You know, and it's just great. I mean, you're going against South Carolina. We're talking about the Goliath of not the SEC but women's basketball. I mean, the past 5 years, that's been Dawn Staley. That's been women's basketball, and for it to just, I mean, for Texas to come in and win and have such a positive attitude about it, and in the press room feel so much pride about the win and so much pride to be part of this program and this team. I mean, it's hard not to root for David. I'm not calling Texas David, but
Mhm.
they this podcast is the road for Tampa. It's called the road to Tampa for a reason. And Lindsey, I said this last week. I wasn't confident that they were going to Tampa because of the Notre Dame game, the last South Carolina game. I stand here right now. I sit here right now, and I tell you, Lindsey, this team will play in the second or third to last game of the year minimum.
Yeah, I agree. Like this team, like that was a complete game. Like that was a full 40-minute game, like wire to wire. Like and Texas never trailed. Like South Carolina tied it up a few times, but Texas never trailed. And like not only did they do it in front of 10,000 people in the Moody Center, it was also the highest viewed women's basketball game on ESPN this year, and it topped out I think at 1.3 million viewers, which is just insane. Because even a few years ago, like they weren't even broadcasting these games on ESPN. Like it didn't matter if it was like the number one and number two team in the country, they would throw them on like ESPN Plus or something or ESPNU, like you would have to go and find it. Like for this game to be on a national network like that and attract that many people is just incredible.
Yeah, I actually just completely forgot about 1.3 million. I mean, Terry asked, I mean, two great questions, one to Dawn, one to Vic, about what it's like to play on Super Bowl Sunday. Like, be the segue into the biggest sporting event, play on the biggest sporting day of the year, be on like a primetime ESPN Sunday slot. I mean, the timing of this team, Lindsay, and how they're playing, and then just the overall sport, and we're seeing the post Caitlin Clark era of college women's basketball. It's a perfect combination, and you can see it. Like I talked to Vic today, like you can see how just happy he looks. Like he was glowing today. I mean, he's always happy, he's always dropping, but he was glowing, and that's what beating South Carolina does, you know.
hmm I think, yeah, like they ended a 57 game conference win streak. Like this is a team that hadn't lost a conference game in like almost 4 years. Like,
I think it was the first SEC game they played in 2021, and it was a overtime loss away. It might have been at Missouri.
yeah, like this is a team that doesn't lose. And so like nobody expected Texas to come out and win this game. Like they've won 57 conference games in a row. That's an incredible thing to do. Like that's unheard of. But South Carolina did it and they were rolling through the rest of the conference. And then they come to Texas, come to the Moody Center and Texas wins. And it's just I think this win is going to give the team the momentum that it needs for the rest of the season. And they can, because at this point, they can beat anybody. They can beat anybody in the country because they've beaten South Carolina, who has historically been one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country, and they're the defending national champions. So this team can beat anybody now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they can beat South Carolina. They can beat anybody, absolutely. And let's not forget they're doing this without one projected preseason second round draft pick in the WNBA and Layla Filia, and they're doing it also without one of their senior leaders who was in like in her prime, like one of the also best players in college basketball in Aaliyah Moore. And we're missing Texas is missing two of their top six best players, and and they just took down the Goliath of women's college basketball. So Aaliyah Moore, I know she's indefinite. We don't know when she's going to return. Layla Filia is out for the year. She'll probably redshirt. Um, and they're still doing this. And I truly believe that if like we have to start asking the question, Lindsay, if Rory doesn't get hurt last year, is Texas ready for moments like these to play without two of their best players? Like as devastating as Rory's injury was last year, has it helped Texas prepare for to win a championship without some of their stars?
I think so. I think this is a team that's every year that, at least since I've been covering them, they've always had some sort of big injury. Like the first year I covered the team 2 years ago, Aaliyah Moore was out with the torn ACL, and Texas bounced back. Won the Big 12 that year, and then last year without Rori Harmon, they did the same thing. So I think this is a team that's prepared to play without its stars, and they just have that next man up mentality. And so that's what they've done so well. That's what Jack Langham one and Ton has done so well. And now we're starting to see more of Jordan Lee and Brianna Preston. And I think that they're going to be a really big part of this lineup moving forward. And I think that's really great for this team.
Yeah. Yeah, Brianna Preston too. I mean, she played a lot of key minutes in the fourth quarter. Justice Carlton, we haven't really seen her that much, and she's has the ability to get 30 points. Like we've seen it before this season. Like, I mean, we've been talking about it all year, but now over any other day, we're seeing the depth of this team. And you talk about South Carolina, like their best players come off the bench as far as like the box scores go. Like their best players are their sixth and seventh men, girls. So it's just incredible. And now Madison Booker, Rory Harmon are getting some recognition for being a top 50 finalist in the Naismith Award. I think Taylor Jones was robbed. I'm gonna be the first one to say it, Lindsey. Taylor Jones is so underappreciated. It's insane. She's overshadowed by Madison Booker and Rory Harmon, and I think she deserves to be in like those. She deserves to be in the three circle. Like she's expanded her shot range. She's a great defender. Foul trouble is a bit of a problem with her, but besides that, I mean, she's consistent. Like if you need her to get a bucket, she's going to get a bucket.
Yeah, Taylor Jones is just she's so consistent. Like I think she has one of the best like shooting percentages in the SEC. She's just so good around the basket and she'll do it all. Like on defense, she'll block shots, she'll grab rebounds. On offense, if one of the guards misses, she's right there to pick up their rebound and put it back in. And then now like with her being able to extend her shot range, like we saw that a little bit from Kyla Oldacre too in the South Carolina game, which Vic Schaefer was very quick to say, I need to get a bigger stop sign for him. But he told Taylor that she has the go ahead to shoot that shot. And we've seen it a bunch of times of her taking the foul line jumper and making it. And it's really given her another level to her game that people have to defend and they're not necessarily expecting because she is so tall that she can get up pretty much over anybody else in the women's game. And I think that she's starting to use her height to her advantage. And it's just, she's gotten so much better this season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, her and Kyla, I mean, I'm just quoting what Vic says. That's a two-headed monster right there. I mean, Kyla also, I feel like we've seen a lot of improvement. I think she was dealing with some kind of injury in the preseason and in the pre-practices, and we the Kyla Oldacre I've been watching in February and the second half of January is not the Kyla Oldacre I watched in non-conference play. I mean, she is great. There's no other way to put it. Is she's not gonna like get a three point. She's not like she doesn't have that much of her game, but she's exactly what you need, and she's a beast. Madison Booker called her a beast. She's a beast, and the fact that Taylor Jones can play hard for 20 minutes and Kyla Oldacre can play hard for 20 minutes, it's like they're playing a 200, they're doing a 200 relay race, and Taylor's sprinting the first 100 and Kyla's sprinting the second 100, and you're gonna get the same time split between the both of them because they're both Usain Bolt. I don't know how to say it. It's just it's they're everything Texas needs to be able to go four guards, not have the four guard lineup and then go into Kyla and Taylor swapping in and out. I would like to see them play on the court at the same time. I think it's a defensive liability, 100%. But on offense, it's a mismatch, So I would like to see it. I know Vic always says statistically speaking, the four guard lineup is the best is our best lineup. And hey, they're 24-2. I'm not doubting it, but
Mhm.
let's just see. Can they have the ability to play on the court at the same time? Can you really have a two-headed monster alive at once? So I'm interested to see if that would happen. I don't know if the opportunity if they're gonna get that opportunity to try it out. Um, Kentucky, LSU coming up on the line, coming up next week, Thursday and Sunday. Um, I don't know, dude. Georgia Amore she scares me, especially in Lexington.
Yeah, she's really good. But I think like I like Texas's defense a lot. Like they shut down Tahina Pow and um Mylasia Fulwiley. Like they shut down the South Carolina guards. And so I think like when you have someone who's so defensively talented like Rory Harmon and then Shea Hawley too, like they are gonna shut them down. And I think a lot of Kentucky's game does go through Georgia Amore, and I think if Texas is able to successfully shut her down like they did against South Carolina with their guards, like I think Texas can control the game and get control pretty early, and I think that's going to be key is they just have to shut down Amore and force the shots to go through other people.
Yeah, I wonder who's gonna guard her because she's a 5'6" guard, so you think of Rory, but then you also kind of think Shea Holly might be able to guard her. Shea Holly is such a glue. I mean, she played so well defensively against South Carolina. She had a couple of huge blocks down the stretch. I just she's also very underappreciated. I just think there's so much glue on this team. That's why they stick so well together.
Hmm.
I mean, they fit like a tight golf glove. It's they everyone plays their part. Everyone knows. I mean, talk to Schaefer, like Brianna Preston was at the presser today. Like her favorite time in the games is when she's on the bench with Jordan Lee, like jumping around, like getting excited with her. And Jordan Lee's also a player we don't talk about enough. It's just the list goes on and on, and everyone plays their part. And yeah, I mean, Kentucky's one of the hottest teams in the country right now. They're 10-1 in the SEC, 19-3 on the season. It's a three-way tie for first place between South Carolina, Kentucky, and Texas, all at 10-1. This is a big game, and we'll see how it goes. I I think I always talked about in this 4 game stretch. If Texas loses any game, it's going to be Kentucky just because of how well they're playing. But after the South Carolina game, my mindset does kind of switch a little bit. I don't know. It's a lot of good basketball, but it's also hard. It's hard to play three of the
Hmm.
top 12 teams in the country in a 10 game stretch, you know?
Yeah, I think this has the most potential to be kind of like a gotcha game where Texas does, if they do get off to a slow start, Kentucky can kind of make a big run and see if they can keep Texas from coming back. But we saw that happen earlier in the season with Ole Miss, and Texas was still able to come back and get the win. It wasn't pretty, but they did it. And I think that's the thing with this Texas team is it's not always going to be pretty. Like against Vanderbilt, that was a pretty win. They shot more three. I think they made 10 threes or something. And then against South Carolina, they made none. But that's just how this team is. And I think they're going to do whatever it takes to get the win, whether that's shoot the threes if they're open or not. And they're going to find ways to score. They're going to play hard on defense for all 40 minutes. Like they are going to play hard. And no matter whether they're shooting the ball well or not, they're not going to give up and they're going to will themselves to a win, just like they did earlier in the season against Ole Miss.
I think that's the beauty of not relying on a 3-point shot, knowing you can get buckets down low or on 8 feet away or whatever free throw line, because you see a lot of teams like they rely on the 3-pointer and then it kind of bites them in the dust. And Vic Schaefer's not like that, and that's why they're so successful in March. That's why they've been to 3 Elite Eights in the past 4 years, is because they don't rely on the 3-point shot. Like if they're having a bad shooting night, it's not going to affect them. They took 3 attempts from behind the arc in South Carolina.
Hmm.
So I think that's why Texas right now is so unbeatable is because their defense is one of the best in the country, and their offense is reliable. It's a Swiss Army knife.
Hmm. Yeah, I
If it's a
agree.
bad shooting night, they're not in trouble.
Hmm. Yeah. Because they
Like,
have so
yeah,
many shooting options. Like, especially like the players off the bench, like Jordan Lee, Brianna Preston. Brianna Preston is just like she's just like a ball of lightning. Um, she's just gonna run around the court like she's will take on anybody and she'll drive to the basket and then Taylor Jones or Kyla Oldacre will be right there to clean up the rebounds. Like this team is just they're so complete and they play for each other and you can really tell that and they really want to win for each other. So they're going to be there on the court and off the court to clean up each other's mistakes, to help each other out when someone does mess up. Or like, and I think that's just the beauty of this team and this program that Vic Schaefer has built.
yeah, we talk about. I mean, Madison Booker goes 7 for 22 from the field goal from from the field and still has 20 points and 11 rebounds. Like
Mhm.
Texas, that's the thing. Texas didn't play to their potential. Like Madison Booker's averaging what? 40, she's averaging 48% from the field this season. So she goes, I don't know what the
Mhm.
math is with 7 for 22, but I know for a fact that's under 40. Might be under, it's 33% ish. 7, 21, 22.
Sure.
Or a little like 32, 31%, somewhere
Yeah.
in there. So for her to shoot 17% under what she normally does, miss 3 or 4 less shots than she normally does, and still have 20 points and have that and one at the end of the season, like or at the end of the game. I don't know, Lindsay. I might be glazing a little bit, but it's we're talking about the a renaissance here. Like this is
Mhm.
we're covering the team at the right time, at the right point of women's college basketball, and to me, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think Madison Booker is just so good. I think she has the potential, like, she is like legit potential to be the Naismith Player of the Year. Um, she is just so good and so consistent. And like, she still scored 20 points, but she shot um 7 for 22, which even she admitted after the game. She's like, yeah, this was an off game for me. Like, usually I don't have to shoot the ball that much. She gets 20 points, but it's what her team needed from her, and she's going to do what her team needs. And even when she's not shooting well, like we saw this against Ole Miss, is she's going to play hard defense, and she's going to go out there and she's going to fight for the ball. She's going to generate steals, get up in people's faces, which is something that she didn't do last year, and I think it's really improved her game on both ends of the court.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's Maddie's special and her whole attitude is so special. Like throwing up the hook'em sign on and
Mhm.
being able to stay so positive in like the most stressful moment of the game is it's awesome. But let's move on to the next time that before we end this podcast. The next time the girls will come back to the Moody Center. I have two questions. Do you think it's going to be another sold out crowd? How close will it be to it if not? And just overall, how do you beat LSU? We're talking about another 10-1 team in this conference.
I think it'll be a sold out crowd. I think with Kim Mulkey coming back and her history with Texas, I think a lot of people are going to want to see that. And LSU is one of the hottest names in the sport right now, too, just like South Carolina. And I think it's another top five matchup. People are going to want to see that. And I think Texas is going to have to play another complete game, just like they did against South Carolina. This LSU team has a lot of depth, they have a lot of weapons. And I think Texas is just going to have to go with the same game plan that they did against South Carolina. Like, obviously, not exactly, like, they're going to do their scouting, but I think Flau'jae Johnson, their point guard, she is so good. And she is such a good shooter from anywhere on the court. Like, someone is just going to have to be marked up on her the whole time and just deny her the ball and force it to go other ways, just like they're going to have to do against Kentucky, just like they had to do against South Carolina. And they did that so well that I think they can do that again. And that's what they're going to have to do to beat LSU.
And Anissa Moro, too, who's a
Mhm.
6'1 guard who's averaging 14 rebounds a game. I mean,
Mhm.
that's playing 6'6". So, yeah, Flau'jae and Anissa, and also Michaela Williams. Those are girls all averaging over all those girls are averaging more points than Madison Booker's averaging. So this LSU team is not that deep. They don't have, I think Texas is where they're stronger, but I mean, we're talking about, I mean, Anissa Moro is projected to be a top 10 pick. Flau'jae Johnson will be a top 5 pick. There's a lot of raw talent on this team, coached by one of the best coaches to ever touch this game. Um, so it'll be interesting being at the Moody Center, LSU being at the Moody Center for the first time. I think that plays in Texas's advantage immediately. I think South Carolina beating Texas by 16 and losing by 4 at the Moody Center really shows the power of of um of the game of that whole stadium.
Mhm.
So I will see. I think if it was at LSU, I'd be a little more skeptical. I think Texas got really lucky in their scheduling for this game. Um, but yeah, I think Texas is gonna win. I don't really know if they have an answer to the two-headed monster of Taylor and Kyla. Um, let's see, they shoot 33% from the three-point line. Not great. So we'll see how it goes. I really think Texas is gonna pull this one out. But first, Lindsey, what's your score prediction for LSU?
Ooh, I don't know. I gotta think. I definitely think this one is going to be a lot more of a high scoring game just because that's what LSU did. Like we saw them against Oklahoma, where both teams put up 100 points, which was just ridiculous. I definitely think this game is going to get into like the 80s. I think Texas 83, LSU 76.
I like that. I also think it's going to be a high scoring game. LSU's averaging 87 points a game.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go. I think Texas takes six threes. I think they make two first. And then I think also Texas wins. I'm going to go 89-81. So, that'll wrap us up for this episode of The Road to Tampa. No Ikey here. He wanted to emphasize how good Kyla Oldacre played In the past week, she is remarkable, obviously. She's a beast. So that'll wrap things up. We'll be back next week to break down Kentucky, LSU, preview the next two games, potentially the end of the season. It's a little lighter of a load. So that'll
Mhm.
wrap it up. Lindsey Plotkin, Zach Davis. We will see you next week. Have a good night.